The first time I realized I had disappeared from my own life. I was standing in my own living room. There were people everywhere, my husband's coworkers, my daughter's friends, my neighbors from down the street. Laughter filled the air. Someone clinked a glass and said, "Let's thank Mark's wife for putting this all together." Everyone clapped. I smiled. And in that moment, while applause echoed around me, I understood something that felt heavier than grief. They were celebrating a woman they didn't even know. Because no one in that room was applauding Emily. They were applauding a role. And I had been playing that role for so long. I no longer remembered who I was before it. I'm telling you this from my living room now. Years later, when the house is finally quiet enough to hear my own voice again. The kids are grown. The dishes are done. My husband is upstairs, asleep in his chair. The television murmuring to itself like an old companion. And I am here, sitting on the same couch where I once rocked babies to sleep, finally brave enough to tell the story I never told anyone. Not even myself. My name is Emily Harper. I am an American woman. And for most of my adult life, I was known as only one thing. Just a wife. When I was 19, I believed the world was wide open. I had notebooks filled with dreams, not just fantasies, but plans. I wanted to be a writer. A journalist. Someone whose words could reach beyond her own walls. My teachers said I had a voice. My friends said I had fire. Then I met Mark. He was steady where I was wild. Practical where I was idealistic. He made me feel safe in a way I had never felt before. And when he asked me to marry him after only a year of dating, I said yes, not because I was ready, but because everyone told me love was enough. I didn't know I was also saying yes to slowly setting myself aside. The first year of marriage felt like success. We moved into a small apartment. I learned to cook meals that made him proud. I learned to budget. I learned to compromise. I learned to soften my opinion so arguments wouldn't start. I thought this was maturity. When our first child was born, I quit my part-time job. When our second arrived, I stopped thinking about going back to work at all. It made sense. Mark's career was taking off. The kids needed me. Someone had to hold everything together. And I did. But no one noticed that every time I held everything together, I let myself fall apart just a little more. Identity doesn't vanish all at once. It fades in ordinary moments. It fades when people stop asking what you want. It fades when your name is replaced with your role. It fades when your dreams start feeling like luxuries instead of necessities. Soon, even you stop asking who you are. At school events, I was Jacob's mom. At work parties, I was Mark's wife. At family gatherings, I was the one who cooks. And I smiled, because smiling kept the peace. Because smiling made people comfortable. Because smiling was easier than explaining the quiet ache growing inside me. One afternoon, when my youngest was in middle school, I was at a volunteer meeting at the community center. We were introducing ourselves around the table. Name, family, occupation. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm Emily. I have 2 kids. I'm married." The woman next to me asked kindly, "And what do you do?" I opened my mouth and felt my throat close. Not because I had nothing to say, but because nothing I said felt like me. "I take care of my family," I finally answered. She smiled. "That's wonderful." But inside, something broke. Because I suddenly realized I didn't know how to describe myself without describing other people. Some nights I would stand in the bathroom after everyone went to bed and stare at myself in the mirror. Not at my wrinkles. Not at my tired eyes. But at the woman behind them. And I would whisper, "Who are you?" The mirror never answered. People ask why women like me don't say something sooner. The truth is simple and complicated at the same time. We don't want to seem ungrateful. We don't want to hurt the people we love. We don't want to admit that the life we worked so hard to build is the same life that slowly erased us. So we swallow our sadness and call it sacrifice. We silence our dreams and call it maturity. We disappear and call it love. The day my daughter left for college, I stood in her empty room holding a box of old notebooks. Inside were my journals from when I was a teenager. Poems. Short stories. Big plans written in messy handwriting. I sat on her bed and cried, not because she was leaving, but because I had left myself a long time ago. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I opened a notebook and wrote one sentence. I don't know who I am anymore, but I want to find her. Reclaiming yourself doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins with fear. Fear of change. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of becoming a stranger in your own life. I started small. I signed up for a writing class at the community college, something I told almost no one about at first. I wrote in the early mornings before anyone woke up. I kept my notebooks hidden like secrets. But every page I filled felt like oxygen. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was remembering. And now, years later, I sit here in this living room, finally brave enough to speak the truth, even if the only listener is the quiet air around me. I lost my identity when I became just a wife. Not because being a wife is wrong. Not because loving my family was a mistake. But because loving them should never have required me to stop loving myself. This isn't just the story of how I lost myself. It's the story of how I found my way back. Through fear, through guilt, through courage I didn't know I had. Through learning that it is never too late to meet the woman you were always meant to be. And this is only the beginning. The morning I wrote in my journal, I don't know who I am anymore, but I want to find her. I didn't realize I had just changed the direction of my life. Because finding yourself is not a gentle process. It doesn't arrive with confidence. It arrives with fear. Especially when you have spent years being everything for everyone else. I didn't tell anyone about the writing class at first. Not Mark. Not my children. Not even my closest friend. Somewhere deep inside, I felt like I was doing something wrong. As if wanting something for myself was the same as taking something away from the people I loved. Every Saturday morning, I woke up before the sun. I made coffee quietly. I drove to the community college while the rest of the world was still asleep. And in that small classroom, something miraculous happened. For the first time in years, people weren't looking at me as someone's wife. Not as someone's mother. They were looking at me. And when I read my words out loud and someone said, "You have a powerful voice," the girl I used to be came back to life inside my chest. One evening, Mark noticed. "You've been leaving early every Saturday," he said. "Where do you go?" I hesitated. Then I finally told the truth. I joined a writing class. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Now." At this age, it wasn't anger. It wasn't concern. It was disbelief. And in that moment, I understood something that broke my heart a little. I wasn't afraid of disappointing him. I was afraid of becoming someone he didn't recognize. Because I had been so small for so long. My growth felt like rebellion. At night, when the house was silent, guilt would sit beside me in bed. Was I being selfish? Was I neglecting my family? Was I ruining the balance we had built? Then I asked myself a different question. Was disappearing for decades the better choice? That question stayed with me. And slowly, quietly, it began to free me. One afternoon, my daughter came home unexpectedly. She found me at the kitchen table, writing. "What are you doing, Mom?" she asked. I smiled nervously. "Just writing." She looked at me for a long moment and said, "You've always wanted to do that, haven't you?" My eyes filled with tears. Because I had never said it out loud. But somehow, she had always known. A few months later, one of my essays was published in a local magazine. Not under Mark's wife. Not under Jacob's mom. Just one line at the top of the page. Emily Harper. I stared at that name for a long time. And for the first time in years, I felt real again. Not useful. Not necessary. Not dependable. Real. One night, I sat across from Mark at the kitchen table. "I need to tell you something," I said. And I did. I told him how I had slowly disappeared. How I had built my life around everyone else and forgot to build one for myself. How I was terrified that choosing myself meant losing him. He listened quietly. Then he said something I never expected. "I didn't know you felt invisible. I thought you were happy because you never said otherwise." I whispered. "I was afraid that if I chose myself, you'd stop loving me." He reached for my hand. "If you choose yourself," he said, "I won't lose you. I'll finally get to know you." That night, I slept without the weight of fear for the first time in decades. I didn't become brave overnight. Some days I still doubted myself. Some days I wondered if I was starting too late. But every time I looked in the mirror, I reminded myself, late is not the same as never. I began teaching small writing workshops. I spoke at community events. I shared my story with women who had been silent for years. And every time a woman told me, I thought I was the only one. I knew my voice mattered. Today, I am sitting in the same living room where I once felt invisible. The walls are the same. The furniture is the same. The memories still live here. But I am not the same woman. If someone asks me now, who are you? I don't hesitate. I'm Emily, I say. A woman who once lost herself and found her way back. I am still a wife. I am still a mother. But I am no longer only those things. I am a writer. I am a dreamer. I am a woman who finally learned that loving others should never require abandoning herself. Maybe this story isn't just mine. Maybe it belongs to every woman who ever put her dreams on hold. Every woman who ever swallowed her voice to keep the peace. Every woman who ever wondered, late at night, is this all I am? If you see yourself in my story, let me tell you what I learned too late, so you don't have to. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are not broken for needing space. And you are not too late to become who you were always meant to be. Because the most powerful moment in a woman's life is not when she becomes someone's everything. It's when she finally becomes herself.